Hello, everybody, and welcome to another edition of FF Champs After Dark. I am your host, Jim Day. You can find me on Twitter at FantasyTaz. We are a part of the Full-Time Fantasy Podcast Network. Make sure you come check us out. Have lots of different pods each and every week. A ton of information coming at you. Make sure you come out and check us out. But let's get into the gentleman we have joining us tonight. Of course, my co-host, Mr. Andy Singleton. You can find him on Twitter at People's Pen. Andy, how you doing tonight?
I'm ill. I'm fighting a cold. I know you heard a can crack, but it's just a diet ginger ale this week. Diet at that. So I'm gonna give it the the college effort. Fresh. What's the phrase I'm looking for? College try. Yeah. So see how long I can last here tonight. But we got the professor on. Talk some fantasy football. Hopefully get you through your start-sit stuff for week 4.
And that professor is, of course, Steve Toroni of the Hot Take podcast. Steve, how you doing? Tell everybody where they can find you, what you do, all that good stuff.
Oh, first of all, yeah, I mean, if we're going to give it the old college try, what better person to have than the professor, right? I honestly thought that when you cracked that can, that's how you guys started every show, which would be kind of a good idea moving forward. But yeah, it's at FF Professor ST3 on Twitter, and then of course at the Hot Take Pod, and then shout out my co-host Blake Sullivan at Blake Sullivan FF, of course.
They've been bottles, so
yeah, usually they're bottles, but they're right. The can opener would be a nice way to start the show after dark. It is that after all. But, another nice way to start the show would be if I had a playmate just sitting on my lap when we opened up. But you can't have everything in this world. So let's get into it. Week 4, Thursday night. We actually had a good game on Thursday night. Shh. Don't talk too loudly. We don't want to jinx the gods. But we did, folks. Can you believe it? A Thursday night game that was actually worth watching. And I'll start with you, Steve. You're the guest. What's your biggest takeaway from Thursday night's game?
Ooh, Packers run defense exposed.
I think I lost Steve.
Do you guys see me here?
I see you. You're there for me.
All right. Well, Packers run defense exposed. Start your running backs against the Packers. That's pretty much it as far as the things that really stood out. I think that the Eagles need to be healthy in order to get a full perspective of what they got going on over there. But Aaron Rodgers is Aaron Rodgers.
Can you guys hear me? Because I think this might be me that's having an issue.
Yeah, you froze, but I hear you and you see you now. You're back.
You're back.
Because we lost Steve again. Damn.
Steve's here.
Oh, there he is. Okay. I'm sorry, Steve. Get into it now. I don't know what happened. We had a definite glitch there. Go ahead, though.
So Packers run defense exposed. Start your running backs against the Packers is my biggest takeaway. Like I said, Eagles need to be healthy in order to get a better idea of what's going on with them. Aaron Rodgers is who he is, and Devontae Adams is who he is. A little disappointed in Aaron Jones. I think that turns around, but man, it's a tough wait.
How about you, Andy? What's your biggest takeaway from last night's game?
I mean, I get where you're going with. We finally got a good game, but did we? I mean, yeah, the scoring was up. So from a fantasy perspective, yeah, you could say that. I mean, my fishbowl team, I had Carson Wentz, Jordan Howard, and Devontae Adams going. So I was pretty pleased with it. I'm off to like 108-point start for the 3 players for this week alone. But I mean, it was kind of sloppy at the same time. There were, some horrific defense, especially by the Eagles. I mean, when you look at their secondary and just from all aspects, the corners to the safeties, it was just, really, really lacking. So, sure, it was a great game depending on what you're looking for, but I don't think it was necessarily, it wasn't a playoff matchup.
If I'm the Eagles, I am getting on the phone with the Jaguars, man. They need some sort of help in their secondary, and Orlando Scandrick isn't it.
Well, I mean, you figure this is going to be the one time finally that the Packers have no choice but to give Aaron Jones a feature role, and he still couldn't really do much with it. It would have been nice to have seen Jamal Williams. Feel bad for him. Hope all is well. But you see Jordan Howard, nobody wanted to believe in it. Jim and I've been saying it for a while. This guy's not going away, and he shouldn't. He's been productive in his time in the league, so I wasn't surprised by what he was able to do. It was nice to see Miles Sanders, but you have people, of course, clamoring for him because they spent more to draft Miles Sanders than they did Jordan Howard. So, of course, everybody wishes that was Miles Sanders getting those Jordan Howard touches last night. But, I'm more concerned about this receiving core than anything. Jeffrey had a couple of drops. You're still missing Djax, which really seemed to be to Carson Wentz's benefit. So I just, want to see this team complete from both sides of the ball before I really pass judgment on where they're at.
So let me ask you one question. You mentioned that, Rodgers was back to being where Rodgers is normally, over 400 yards. He actually had 46 yards on the ground as well. Put up good numbers this week. Do you think this is what we can look at going forward, or do they backslide back into, doing what they have to do and not really pressing him to win games?
It's a combination. I mean, I was tweeting during the game that he only had 7 yards entering this week. So when do we become worried that, is this not the same player that we've typically seen in the past? And not to say that he needs to run or he was some dynamic runner, but when you phase a facet of your game out and you're not even looking to do it, then I think it changes the approach all around. So it was nice to see him get back to scrambling a little last night and adding something with his legs. But I mentioned how bad and how porous the defense was for Philly. I mean, that's really what got Devontae Adams going. And then when you saw that he got hurt, nobody else was willing to step up. They needed a play down, at the end, and they couldn't make it happen. So I don't know that I feel great about this offense going forward. They still seem to be a little kind of stuck in mud a little bit, but that's why, as I was saying, you could say it was a great game because there were points scored, but I don't know that it was a great game. I think that both defenses weren't really that great.
Well, when I say great game, I want to see a lot of points. So, yes, that's what I was referring to.
No, for sure.
Championship type of game.
For sure. But I think it's a reflection more on how bad the defenses were than how good the offenses were. And, if you take either of those offenses from last night and just assume that, that they're running full speed ahead next week, I think you're in for a rude awakening.
Very cool. Let's keep moving on. So we got next. Okay, well, everybody knows by now Melvin Gordon is back. He went from being doubtful of playing this week to now all of a sudden he's going to play in a limited role. I'm going to start with you this time, Andy. What's your thoughts here? First of all, what are your thoughts on this backfield for the rest of the season? But then this weekend, will you take a chance on Gordon this weekend?
He's not playing this weekend, is he?
No, now they're saying he's going to play in a limited role, and this comes from the head coach.
Back and forth.
Yeah, well, they kind of got their hands pushed into the pot because Justin Jackson is out.
Well, that's fine because Justin Jackson had a role this week anyway. This is the perfect week for any running back to come back and play against this defense in Miami. So Austin Ekeler right now is my number 2 running back of the week. He just has a fantastic matchup, and Justin Jackson had value as well. So this is a great situation for Melvin Gordon to get worked back into the offense, and both of these running backs to have relevance and continue to go forward. But if you have Melvin Gordon, you've been holding on this whole time, right? So
you're just going to throw him in this week and say, what the heck?
I mean, yeah, look at what Tony Pollard did in a reserve role last weekend against Miami. So, who do you think is better, Melvin Gordon or Tony Pollard?
No, I think it's Gordon, absolutely. But
all right,
that doesn't mean he's in football shape.
And you would hope he's been training at least, and I'm not saying.
See, that's a different thing, though. Training, and Steve and I. It seems like Steve, we were just talking about this just recently, weren't we? About an hour ago, we were talking about this on your podcast. It is a difference between working out and being in football shape. There really is.
And there's difference between playing defense and what the Miami Dolphins are doing.
Hey, the Dolphins aren't the worst defense in the league through 3 weeks, though.
I mean, like,
Just started Andy has a great. So
No,
fill
he
in,
said
fill
good.
in,
I
the,
don't think
fill in the
great. I
blank.
think he said good. Don't get a swelled head.
But it was Andy has a great.
No,
and
good.
you
I
can
think he
just
said good, not great.
Leave that open
oh, it was a
for
good point.
interpretation.
I'll clarify. It was a good point. Can you guys hear me?
Yes, yeah, we can. I don't know. Maybe it might
Okay.
be my connection tonight, guys, but for some reason we're getting a lot of glitches, and I'm sorry to everybody listening or watching.
So it's a good point that Melvin Gordon, look, if you've held on to him this long, why wouldn't you play him with this matchup? Keeping the year out, obviously, Austin Ekeler is still a great play. I think he's still a top 10 play. He was my 3. Andy, you said he was your 2, so I'm right there with you for this week, RB3 this week. I think he's still a top 10 play even with Melvin Gordon. We've seen multiple backs already get work in the same game. Talk about Pollard last week, had 100 yards and a touchdown. So 2 backs can be viable. I think Melvin Gordon, even in a limited role, you play him. You play him if he's playing.
I don't. It depends on who you're playing him over him. But I mean, this is the first week of bye, so if you got Matt Breida, if you got Le'Veon Bell, and suddenly they're not available for you, maybe you've been relying on Raheem Mostert the last couple of weeks or something like that. Maybe you plug Melvin Gordon into your flex if that's one of your options. I'm not totally adverse to it, and I get people, Jim, my ball in the comments saying football shape is way different. Listen, I get it. I'm not saying it's not. I'm not saying start him as your RB1 and expect him to be primetime Melvin Gordon, but depending on what your options are, I don't think it's a tailor-made play for him this week based on the matchup.
Yeah, I get that. I get that. And you guys may be talking me into it, but because it really does, it won't take much for him to have a good game and put up good points. I get that. My concern is, first of all, that he's a prime candidate for a soft tissue injury if he tries to force himself back in so quickly without the working, as a team, getting hit, all of that stuff comes into play for me. But you're right. I mean, it's not going to take much. Even if they just give him goal line plunges, he could end up with, 40 yards and 2 touchdowns and still put up good numbers.
I had Justin Jackson coming in at 38th this week. So I'll probably just swap Melvin Gordon into that spot. So I'm saying in that 40 range. I mean, it's not overly optimistic, but it's not at the tail end of my top 75 either.
Yeah, no, definitely not. And look,
Well,
it is still Melvin Gordon, but go ahead.
Let me ask you guys this real quick, because I'm looking at my rankings right now, and I have Kenyan Drake around 34. So talking about Justin Jackson right behind there for you, Andy. I mean, who would you play, Kenyan Drake or Gordon this week?
Yeah, I have Drake at 30, so I would probably go with Drake in that situation, just off of volume or perceived volume.
Yeah, especially since the Chargers defense this year hasn't looked anywhere near where they were last year. They haven't really gotten going yet. So that might be a good play for that as well. It's tough. Gordon is a tough call. He could end up with 10 touches, and if he doesn't get any goal line attempts, he could end up with nothing. So I mean, he's a risky play, but the upside is there. Let's face it. Even if he just gets goal line chances, the upside is there. So you guys might have talked me into it. I'm not sure. I'm going to have to think on that a little bit more. But let's keep going. Next thing up is Rashad Penny returns to practice. Now, normally this wouldn't be the question, but should Chris Carson be worried? And the only reason I bring it up is because he keeps putting the ball on the ground. I'll start with you this time, Steve. What's your take here? Are you worried about Carson at this point? Do you think Penny maybe takes a bigger role, or do you believe the coaches when they say Carson's still our guy?
Yeah, it's you're playing with fire here with Chris Carson, because I think one more time that he puts that ball on the floor, Allen is having a decent game. it's not going to take much. You can listen to what the coach says, or you can listen to what he actually did in the game when Chris Carson fumbled and CJ Procise was on the field.
Looks like we lost Steve again. He'll be back in a minute. But yeah, what he's saying is if Carson does it again, then we could definitely be in trouble there. There's no doubt about it. He's still there. He is. He's back. Go ahead. We lost you for a second. We lost him again. This connection is terrible tonight.
He never stopped talking.
Well, he didn't know he was out. I didn't know I was out when I went out before. We lost that whole thing, Steve.
Listen, Chris Carson's competing with himself, not with Rashad Penny. So the fact that Penny's practicing again is meaningless to me. It's still Chris Carson's opportunity and role, as Steve was starting to say.
Yeah,
you're playing with fire. If he puts it on the turf again, that could spell the end of his season. Yeah, it can. So you got to take that chance, though.
Steve, you want to get your thought in now?
I was just saying you're playing with fire with Chris Carson. So it's a great matchup, of course. You play him this week. Yeah, you should be worried as a Chris Carson owner or buy Rashad Penny right now, because if they're playing this week and Carson puts the ball on the floor, it could be Rashad Penny's ball game. And we can listen to what the coach is saying, what Pete Carroll is saying, or we can watch what he did with CJ Procise, where he got significant work in this game after Carson put the ball on the ground. So it won't take much for Rashad Penny to take this role if Carson keeps fumbling.
So Mendo Bruce in the chat, he says he's playing Kerryon Johnson over Carson this week. I'll start with you, Andy. You think that's a good play, or you have an issue with it?
No, I think that's a good play. I have Kerryon at 14 and Carson at 16. So, that's by my numbers how I would have it. It looks like I am in line with the consensus on Kerryon Johnson, at least at this time. And I'm actually I'm a little lower by 4 spots on Carson than the ECR, than the standard. So I'm all in favor of that. I will go Kerryon.
How about you, Steve? Yeah, we're having a hard time with Steve. Oh, damn, that sucks. Look, I actually have Carson a lot higher than Kerryon this week. Kerryon, we haven't seen Kerryon get a ton of work. He had a decent game last week, but he's just not getting enough carries to get himself going. I think they do give Carson another chance, and against this matchup against Arizona, I have to play him. I actually have him pretty high this week. I think I have him at 10. Meanwhile, I have Kerryon Johnson at 17.
Yeah, well, here's the deal with Kerryon Johnson. I mean, you look at what he did against Philly last week, and it wasn't great by any stretch, 20 carries for 36 yards, but he's the only one getting carries for this team. So I think the matchup is a little bit better for him against Kansas City this week. I do still like Ty Johnson long-term. If you read the write-up I did 2 weeks ago on Ty Johnson, you'll know I like him a lot, but I mean, Kerryon Johnson.
Had lunch with him down at the Senior Bowl.
No, I didn't. I have no ties to Ty Johnson.
Steve, but, you'll learn that Andy loves to throw names around. He had dinner with Donald Trump a couple of weeks ago. We haven't heard the last of it.
Fantastic.
Yeah, I don't know where this one started, but it keeps going. But Kerryon Johnson is the only one, getting really significant touches in that backfield. So it's his job. It's his role. It's not changing. And for that, you gotta really strongly consider him over who was the guy we were talking over?
Carson.
Over Carson. Yeah. Listen, I like Carson still, as I mentioned. I think he's playing against himself, not against Rashad Penny. So,
well, he is playing against himself. I'm not saying that he's not, but it's all about his fumbles. If he continues to do it, he's going to lose the job.
Yeah, for sure. But between the two, Kerryon.
Yeah, I got Carson higher. I think Carson is a good play this week. But again, he could come out at any time. But, you got to play these guys going up against Arizona. Their defense is just getting shredded each and every week. My ball's got another question, so we're going to take that. Since these guys came to watch us and listen to us, we're going to answer their questions. Edelman or Curtis Samuel this week in a PPR, Steve? Go to you first.
Oh, that's tough. I really don't like Edelman's matchup, and of course the injury. I I would go Edelman. It's really a floor and a ceiling play here. I would probably go Edelman, depending on my roster. But I think Curtis Samuel has the ceiling here, and he has a very nice matchup. I would try to get both into your lineup. I mean, that's a weird situation to have, I think. But yeah, it depends on who you're playing. If you need the ceiling, go Curtis Samuel. If you need the safety, go Edelman.
How about you, Andy?
Yeah, I'm much lower than the industry on Edelman. I have him at 32 this week, but I have Samuel at 30. So for me, they're neck and neck, and I will go with Samuel just based on the matchup. I just like the matchup better for Samuel. I think it'll be a little bit more of a air it out attack, and so what Kyle Allen was able to do last week. I like how that offense potentially has the ability to put the ball in the air. So I'll take Samuel this week.
I actually do have Samuel higher than Edelman too, but it's not so much I'm worried about the matchup because, again, Steve and I talked about this before. We expect Tre'Davious White to be covering Gordon a lot in this game, and I think Edelman will be able to eat. But my concern is, can he stay in all game? I mean, if he takes another good hit, we could see him on the sideline quickly. When he's talking chest, that could definitely become an issue quickly. Especially if the other team is hunting that chest. Not that any NFL teams do that kind of thing, of course. That would be strictly verboten. But, yeah, it happens. I look, the one thing I really like about Samuel is that Kyle Allen targeted him so much more than DJ Moore last week. Moore only had the 2 targets. I forget exactly what Samuel had. It just went right out of my damn head. But it was definitely a lot more.
7.
Seven, yeah. Of course, Olsen played a huge part in that game as well. But wait, this is the thing that's killing me. Olsen, he looks like hell when he's out there running, but he still finds a way to get open all the time. But every time he's out there, he looks like he's lumbering, like, oh my God, I got to run some more. Like, it's like that back is going to go like any second to me when I see him run. But he keeps getting it done.
Well, if you remember, that's what I was, alluding to last week, saying,
I didn't remember what show it was on. I've only done like 16 since we last talked.
I was saying, I loved the matchup that he had, but it was troublesome. It was worrisome just knowing that this guy has been laboring. I mean, Arizona's been abysmal against tight ends, which is why I have Will Dissly so high for this week.
I agree.
But it didn't matter what kind of, how much time Olsen, was spending with the trainer pre and post game. We can joke about it, but listen, the proof was there on full display. 7 targets, 6 receptions, 75 yards and 2 touchdowns. I mean, how can you not like that? I'm good. I'm good with trusting Greg Olsen going forward. Despite
until you can't, right? That's what I say. Until you can't, the guy's still going to be a Hall of Famer. So he's been getting it done for a lot of years. It's just at some point that back I think is going to give, but until then, at this point, he's got to be a must play for me. Steve, any last thoughts on that before we move on?
On Greg Olsen or just
Carolina pass catchers in general at this point? That's what it de-involved into.
I think keep starting your Panthers. I mean, all across the board, honestly. I really like this Kyle Allen-led offense, and the matchup this week is nice, honestly. So everybody is viable from the Carolina standpoint. I really like the flow that I think that this game is going to produce. I think they're going to go back and forth between just how Allen and Kyler Murray went at it for that first half until Murray fizzled out. I think Watson will be able to compete a little bit more, honestly. So I'm liking all Carolina pass catchers this week.
Fair enough. We got another question in the chat room from Izzy Is. And yes, he is. But his question is James White or Darryl Williams in standard league? Man, I hate standard leagues. Steve, what's your thoughts here?
That's tough, man. Obviously, if it's a PPR, you go James White. Darryl Williams, you probably are going to get some red zone opportunities. I do think that James White has chances for touchdowns in this game. Really tough. I think I would go James White.
That is tough in the standard. I get you. I mean, I understand in this game, he might have that chance. What's your
Yeah,
take here, Andy?
Yeah, it's Darryl Williams for
Darrell,
me
yeah, I would say
in
Darrell.
in any format. I like James White coming back. I always love the off-field stuff, getting into the psychology of things. James White, the birth of the child, everything like that.
Do we even know if it was a boy or a girl? I don't think I saw that anywhere.
Yeah, I'm not sure, but I buy into all that kind of stuff. I think he could have a great game, but I don't think this is the week to do it. And there's just too much uncertainty for that New England team from me right now to which is the guy that's going to be the guy week in and week out. We were talking up Philip Dorsett last week, and he's starting to emerge as better than what people wanted to believe he was going to mean to Tom Brady and to this offense. And then one of the big reasons Damian Williams got talked up all offseason was because of Andy Reid preferring his guy and, that guy getting a large volume of work in an Andy Reid offense. And it does not seem to be the case. It seems to be whoever is in the backfield this year, it's going to be a two-back committee for whatever running backs are 1 and 2 on the depth chart for the Chiefs that week, whether it's Damian, Darrell, Darwin, LaShawn, doesn't matter. Right now it seems to be LaShawn McCoy and Darrell Williams. So I definitely think there's some work and enough to squeeze out a role. So it's not pretty saying I would start him over James White, but I think I would have to.
I'm with Andy on this one. I think that Williams gets a better chance to score. James White could absolutely score, no doubt about it. In this matchup, you take one to the house. It can happen. The problem is he just doesn't get enough chances at that for me to really like that. I think I got to go with Williams in a game where, Vegas has them within implied point total of 30 points. I think it's going to be all hands on deck here as it has been the last few weeks. And I think that trend continues this week. So I think I would have to go with Williams there. We too got another one in the chat room, and this one's a little bigger. Guy gave us half his team. This is from Rome, DMV. Okay, he needs 4 of these people. They're all 4 flex spots. He says, I'm super stacked and super conflicted, and he has to win this week, or he's going to go out and commit Harry Carey. No, he didn't say that. I just added that for my own pleasure. So look, give us half his team. He got Amari Cooper, Julian Edelman, Will Disley, Kerryon Johnson, Demarcus Robinson, Mecole Hardman, Larry Fitzgerald. Cooper and Fitzgerald, absolutely 1 and 2 for me. To me, that's like no doubt they're in my lineup. I'm playing them. Edelman, if he gets a full practice in Saturday, he's probably number 3. I do love Disley this week a lot, though. But how do you sit Robinson Hardman? Yeah, it's this is as big you need like a 7-headed coin here. Cooper and Fitzgerald for me are easy. I take those 2. I think I put Kerryon in there, but I don't love that matchup as much, so I don't know. Cooper, Fitzgerald. Okay, screw it. I'm going with my gut. Cooper, Fitzgerald, Disley, and Demarcus Robinson this week. I'll go to you, Steve. Who's your next choice? Who's your choices?
I would say Cooper, Fitzgerald, Kerryon, and then I would play one of the Chiefs. I'll go Mecole. Because I like that opportunity of just one play, 90 yards, and that's a touchdown, and you're done for the day. I think until we see it not happen, I'm just going to keep banking on it because Patrick Mahomes is a surefire thing with Hardman getting 90% snap count. They give him carries on end arounds. So I'll give Hardman for the boom play, Amari, Larry Fitzgerald, and Kerryon.
Okay. How about you, Andy?
I was right there with you, Jim. First, I'd like to know what kind of league this guy's playing in, that he's got 4 flex spots. And, these are the options. So kudos to you for having these options, but 4 flex spots. Second of all, listen, you got to win every week, but week 4 should not be a must-win week. But your team better than I do.
Hey, I like his passion, though.
If you're in, if DMV stands for Department of Motor Vehicles, I would like to know if you have any connections in New York that you could hook me up with. But Amari Cooper is my number 3 receiver this week. He's definitely in there. Will Dissly's my number 1 tight end this week. He's not my number 1, actually. I think I have him number 2 or 3. Hold on. I go back and check for you. I have him at 3. But he should be number 1 because on paper, Arizona is giving up more points to the tight end than anybody by a wide margin. So fire up Dissly as well. Take that gamble. Take that risk. So that's 2. Larry Fitzgerald, if you want to go tried and true, go Larry Fitzgerald. The first 2 weeks were fantastic. He came back down to earth a little, obviously, in week 3. So if that scares you off a little, play both Chiefs because you know one of them is going to have a big game, if not both of them. They both have potential to light it up. The interesting stat I saw from I saw it secondhand. Apparently, it was on Good Morning Football, but somebody else was referencing it. This is the first time as a professional Pat Mahomes is playing in a dome. Yeah, and the last time he played in it,
I didn't know that either.
The last time he played in a dome in college, he only threw for 600 yards and 6 touchdowns. So we don't know how good Patrick Mahomes is in a dome as a pro, and why not fire up both of those high upside guys? I mean, you know, Steve said he'd play Nicole, right? What if it's Demarcus Robinson that goes off this week? You're going to feel horrible that you made the wrong call. And, you know, you don't want to flip the coin on that and be wrong. So I'd say Cooper, I'd say Dissly over Fitzgerald because I think the floor could be similar, but I think Dissly has a better shot to score multiple touchdowns. We saw what Greg Olsen did last week against this team. And then give me both Chiefs. I'll take the gamble with both Chiefs and that upside, that high octane upside.
So you're not playing carry on?
No, I would not. I would bench carry on in favor of the explosiveness of.
Yeah, you're going. You know, at that point, you're looking at upside. You know, he said he needs to win. You got to go with the upside. You know, I get that too. I can't sit Fitz. I have such a hard time with that. Fitz is like my kryptonite. He really is. I got to get him every year. I got to draft him every year, and he just kicks my butt.
if I wasn't so high on carry on this week, I think I'd be right there with you, Andy, because you don't want to make that wrong decision on the Chiefs. I got carry on as my number 4 running back this week. So I'm calling my shot with carry on this week because we saw the volume last week. Now that, you know, look, CJ Anderson is gone and they seem to be committing more to carry on. He got 20 carries. 36 yards is going to scare some people.
Yeah, I was going to say.
Well, it's going to scare some people away, but I love that volume and this point total and what we're thinking this game's going to be. I think carry on explodes this week. This is going to.
See, the only problem with that is I expect this team to have to throw a lot in this one. They're not going to be able to run the ground in this game a ton. They're going to have to throw. And the fact of the matter is that carry-on's just not getting enough targets for me. If they get behind early, carry-on becomes an afterthought. And you just don't get anything out of him. And, you know, to me, he's got the lowest floor because of this matchup against Kansas City.
I appreciate
that he'll stay on the field.
So you expect him to all of a sudden become part of the passing game when they haven't done that yet?
Yeah, I think that last week obviously was the first week we saw without CJ. Obviously, they're using Ty Johnson, but I just believe that they're going to get it right. One of the, you know,
I hope you're right because I have carry on. I'd love to be able to trust him at this point, but I just can't. I expected him. They talked about getting him the ball more in the passing game, and they just haven't even looked to do that yet. Maybe with Amendola being hurt, maybe they do this week, and I'd love to see it. But until they do, I'm a little hesitant.
It's a good call on Amendola being out. It could give him a little bit more opportunity. But you're right. They're not using him as much as we thought that they would use him in the passing game, especially when you compare it to last year.
Yeah, right. Exactly. That's what scares me at this point. If I don't play him and I'm wrong and he goes out and has a great game, I can live with that. Because at least it'll show that he's got life and they're getting him involved that way. I'll be okay with that. But, the other guys to me, I just think have more upside. And look, I'm okay even if you want to sit Fitz because I don't think he has tremendous upside. I think he could have a really good game. But, the two Kansas City guys definitely have the most upside. So I can get with that as well.
I appreciate the fact that Carrion is a receiving threat out of the backfield, and you'd expect him, even if the Lions get behind, you'd expect him to still have an opportunity in that. But I think when you look at what Kansas City has done in giving up those yards this year, game one against Jacksonville wasn't horrible against Fournette, 13 carries, 66 yards. You look at week two, they blew the rails off Oakland and shot all their, optimism, down in flames. So that was a blowout. And you look at Josh Jacobs that game, 12 carries, 99 yards. Yeah, that to me was not let's try to keep up with Kansas City. That was let's try to figure out what we have here. And the game script was totally different at that point. Josh Jacobs is a good runner, so I kind of throw that out. And then you look at what Baltimore was able to do.
Oh, wait. Before you get to Baltimore, the problem with that is that's all that Jacobs did that week was the 99 yards. So he didn't even get you 10 fantasy points.
Right, exactly. So, okay, good point. And, then you fast forward to Baltimore. And listen, it's coming out at how good of a coach Harbaugh is, and just, the onside drop kick at the end of the game. And I mean, all the things that this guy's come up with throughout his career, it just goes to show. Look at the game script that Baltimore had. They were running the ball to try to limit the time that Patrick Mahomes had available to him. So they were trying to control the game with their run attack. And, Mark Ingram is no slouch. So also you got to factor in how they're game planning against Lamar Jackson in that situation. So I don't think you can look at Baltimore as necessarily the blueprint for how Kansas City is going to line up against most runs and run, their run defense stacking up. So I don't want to look at the 3 games Kansas City has played to this point and say that's the recipe for how teams are going to run against them. So that's another factor going against Carrion for me this week.
Okay, I think we're all caught up in the chat room. So let's get to some sleepers and busts for this week. I'm going to go to our guest first, and I'm going to ask you to dig deep, Steve, and give us a sleeper for the week that you really like.
So I called this last week in a couple places, and I think, a lot of times fantasy football, we call a guy, he doesn't hit, and then what do? We bench him, and then he hits. So
always.
I think Devin Smith, we have a sample size with a game without Michael Gallup, and that's 92% snap count. So he actually was on the field more than Randall Cobb, and they like having that deep threat on the field in Dallas, obviously. The Saints, they've given up points every week, 30, 27. Last week, I think it was close to 30. Against the Seahawks, I think it was 33 points that they gave up. I think Devin Smith is a nice boom play for you on Sunday Night Football. He got 5 targets last week. He only ended up with 2 of those for 39 yards. It's a big play just waiting to happen. So I think he's a sleeper, especially in a DFS situation. Most 10 or 12 team leagues, you probably don't have to play him, but you certainly could depending on the matchup. So I like Devin Smith as a sleeper.
And you're right, though. Everybody, based on last week was the week that it was going to be a good matchup too, and everybody was throwing everything at Devin Smith. Comes up this week, everybody's going to bail, and it'll be the week he actually snaps out. I agree. It happens way too often. How about for you, Andy? You got a sleeper for us?
I mentioned the Disley pick before. I don't know that it's such a sleeper. Everybody's talking about it.
It's really not a sleeper against Arizona.
No. I'm not talking about Disley. I was going to say, I don't know that it's so much a sleeper with everybody talking about Terry McLaurin, but I have him in my top 10. I have him as my 8th wide receiver this week. It's 15 spots higher than what seems to be the consensus. At some point, you just got to realize that this guy is a playmaker. He had 31 receptions at Ohio State last year and turned that into 13 touchdowns. I mean, he scored a touchdown on more than a third of his receptions. It was insane, just the numbers he's putting up. He has track speed. He can run a full route tree. He's big. He's physical. He's dynamic. And I'm just happy that people are finally starting to see that through 3 weeks. He's got a plush matchup this weekend against the Giants. I mean, if Mike Evans was just ridiculous. Anything he wanted to do, he did. And I'm not saying Terry McLaurin's Mike Evans, but Terry McLaurin's in that same conversation as being an elite high-level wide receiver. So
no, he's not yet. No, he's not. I like the guy. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that, but he's not in that conversation yet. He's just not.
Oh no, talent-wise, he is, and we got to look at talent.
I still think there's some things he needs to work on.
Absolutely, I'm not saying he's a complete product. I'm just saying talent-wise, he's in that same conversation, and it's just learning the nuances of the game and fine-tuning it. But
that's what puts those guys in that conversation, the nuances, the fine-tuning.
And the Giants' defense is not the one to stifle him. So
no, I'm not saying they will.
So I think Terry McLaurin is going to outproduce what people are expecting this week, and maybe then he'll finally start being elevated into that low-end wide receiver 1, high wide receiver 2 category.
Okay, so you're not worried at all about the injury, because the last I heard that it was going to be a game-time decision.
I mean, of course, we'll have to play that when we get closer to kickoff. But for me, what I've learned with injuries and game-time decisions is if guy's playing, I'm treating him almost as if I'm not worried. It's either you're out or you're into me when it comes to football. You're rolling the dice a little with that, because we've seen plenty of guys that are game time decision. They start and they only play one series and they're out. I get that.
Sammy Watkins.
Yeah, but for the most part, I on the flip side of that, I've seen too many times guys that were game time decisions, and then you get fearful and you bench them, and they've been perfectly fine. So
and go out and have great games. I absolutely get it. That's why I was just asking you. I do think that Paul Richardson is a great play this week. Either way, even with McLaurin on the field, I think Paul Richardson could eat as well. We've seen his targets increase each week. He looks like he's finally healthy. While he's healthy, you might want to enjoy it, because it may not be for too long. Talk about another guy who has a hard time staying on the field. So I get that, but I think he's in a great position this week. And he's a guy I love in DFS this week, is Paul Richardson, because his price is still low enough that it really gives you a chance to chalk up a little bit more. But let's keep going. My sleeper of the week, I actually had a couple. I thought one of you guys would take one of them, but Dontrell Inman and the Chargers I like a lot this week with Mike Williams out. Travis Benjamin looks like he's going to be out as well. I think Dontrell Inman is the next guy up. And he's made big plays with Rivers before. I think we see it again this week. So I like him as one. And I'm going to give you the other one, too, is Darius Slayton with the Giants. Finally got healthy last week, had a pretty decent game last week. I think this week, going against Washington defense, I mean, we could talk about the Giants defense being bad. Washington's pretty freaking bad, too. So the Giants should eat here as well. So I think Darius Slayton is another good DFS play, as well as a really nice sleeper if you're in a really deep league. And, like that guy in that league where he had, 2 extra flexes he could throw in, this might be a week that somebody does that for him. So go ahead.
Yeah, I like the Dontrell Inman play. I've always loved Dontrell Inman. I think he's better talent than he gets credit for, but I don't think he's a dynamic talent. And the problem with this is it feels irrelevant what Mike Williams does or doesn't do. This is, to me, just fire up even more shares of Keenan Allen and
30
go back
target day for Keenan Allen.
Yeah, and go back to that running game that we were talking about, Austin Ekeler. So for me, it's really just Ekeler and Allen this week. And if you had to play Melvin Gordon, sure, but the only 2 Chargers I'm really paying attention to at all are Allen and Ekeler, and I think you got to get both of them into any lineup that you can.
What about Rivers?
Yeah. Well, I guess
if the receivers are going to do good, they got to come from Rivers.
Yeah, but I mean, Keenan Allen could have 150 yards and be great as a receiver. If Phillip Rivers has 150 yards, it's not great as a passer.
That is true.
So
that's where I'm hoping Dontrell Inman comes in and provides that little bit more. We do have a couple last questions here in the chat room that I want to get to. I lost it. Rome, here we go. Here it is. He wants to know Brady or Stafford with the granny hip this week. And It seems like a ridiculous question most of the time, but Stafford has been playing pretty well. I do think he's going to have to throw a ton in this one against Kansas City. And of course, Brady is going up against Buffalo. I'll start with you, Andy, this time. Which one do you like this week and why?
I got Stafford over Brady. I think Buffalo is going to give New England some fits this week. I ultimately think New England wins, but I think it'll be a tougher battle. And I think Detroit's going to be trying to keep pace with the Chiefs, as is every team that Kansas City plays. So I think Stafford will be chucking it all over the place this weekend. And that's kind of what you want for your quarterback in a fantasy aspect. So I'll take the volume that I think Stafford's going to get over Brady.
How about you, Steve?
Yeah, at this point, I'm not worried about the hip. I'm not sure the extent of that injury, but I don't think it's very serious. Got Matthew Stafford at 9, Tom Brady at 13. Same kind of things as Andy. I'm looking at Stafford to keep up with Patrick Mahomes, or try to keep up with Patrick Mahomes, where it's going to be a tough divisional game with Brady and the Bills.
I do think that Stafford's going to have to throw at least 45 times. And you know what? Whenever he hits 45 times or more pass attempts, he usually becomes pretty damn fantasy viable. And I like Stafford a lot this week, too. I've been talking about this all week, and I'll continue to talk about it. Everybody keeps saying, oh, well, Buffalo's finally going to get tested this week going against New England. You could say the same thing for New England. They haven't faced anybody yet either. Now they're going against a tough Buffalo team in Buffalo. I think both of these teams are going to get tested this week. It's going to be really interesting to see how this game plays out. And it's going to be one of the ones I'm going to focus on because it could get interesting quick. And I'm not usually a low-scoring type of guy, but this could get interesting quick. I like it a lot. We got another question coming in from the chat room here from Hamza Suli. John Ross, Singletary, or it's a trade question. Okay, I misread that. He wants to know if he should trade John Ross and Singletary for Julian Edelman. See, Hamza, you got to tell us, first of all, is it PPR league? And second of all, now there's really no second of all. Is it a PPR league? That's really what I need to know. So put it in the chat room whether or not it's a PPR, and we'll come right back to that. How's that? Until you do that, I'm going to go to this next question for Rome again. Who's some good RBs to buy low right now? And I'll start with you, Andy. Who do you like to buy low at this point?
It depends on what's available. I find that running back is completely dried up.
He's not talking waiver wires. He's talking about trying to go out and make trades for her.
No, I get it. I mean, it depends on what's available. You're subjected to what's your options are. To me, it really comes down to what are your available options. I don't like to play the hypotheticals of, I'll take this guy. I'll buy this guy because now you're going to be targeting him. What if the guy that owns him doesn't want to give him away? So, we're just talking about Singletary.
You can't target him and try and go after him.
No, but
you're just
talking about Singletary in the last question that we didn't get to answer. I mean, I've loved Devin Singletary, so he's a guy I would say, hey, buy low if you can get Devin Singletary low because he's going to be having the range to that at some point this season. I don't expect his injury to linger forever. Jury's still out a little. If you can get him low, sure, why not? But on the other side of that, in a redraft league, you might even be able to get Saquon Barkley cheap right now for the guy who doesn't want to wait, 6 to 8 weeks. So
there you go. You just answered the question. No hemming and all, and I like that.
But it really depends on what your options are. So I don't like to go with the generalities in questions like those. That's just me personally, though.
Yeah, but it's not generalities because you're saying
these are guys.
No, it's not because you're just giving the guy a few names of people that he can try and go out and get. That's all. What is there generality about that? I can't even say generalities. See, you got me all flubbered here. It just doesn't make any sense, Andy.
Flummoxed.
Yeah, right. You're giving them names. Steve, any names that you like as buy low candidates right now at running back?
Yeah, how about the two guys we're going to see Monday night? Joe Mixon, I think you can still buy lower than what he actually is. And then James Conner, of course. Both of these guys have a great opportunity. And I think they're in a situation where they're going to get volume. The regression is going to come back to the mean, essentially, with those two. Devontae Freeman is another name. I mean, look, he's getting the volume that you want. You saw him actually put together a decent game. You can still buy him low. I really do believe these guys haven't hit their potential yet in the season.
I see. I find that hard to believe because I don't see those guys as being available options. If I have Mixon or James Conner, I'm not trading them right now. I'm not selling them cheap. Not especially for what I invested in them. It's more to do. No, but it's more to do with the what's available at running back. There's not that many names of guys that you feel week in and week out I'm starting, regardless of what he did last week.
Out there that could be stacked with guys that are overproducing right now, and they're sitting there with Mixon and not even starting them, or Connor and not even starting them. Another name I'll throw out there right now that everybody's afraid of is Todd Gurley. I'm buying Todd Gurley anywhere I can. Look, and this is what I don't get about what you're talking about, Andy, is it never hurts to ask. It never hurts to ask.
Go ask.
Ask away.
Ask away.
Just want to have names that you can ask. All these guys that we consider studs that haven't been playing well, those are all your good buy low candidates. Those are all the guys you want to try and go because, as Steve says, they will eventually regress to the mean, get back to what we expect to see from them because they are good. Those are guys that I definitely agree are good buy low candidates right now. It is what it is. So we'll keep going. So we finally got Hamz's question. We're going to go back to that one. He's trading. Well, I'm not sure which side he's on, so let's just take that away. But it is PPR. So I'll start with you, Andy. Would you trade John Ross and Singletary? See, and this is where this gets hard without knowing the rest of his lineup. But let's take that out of the question. John Ross and Singletary, would you trade the two of them for Julian Edelman right now?
I'm guessing that he has depth to be able to offer those two. And Julian Edelman, I would start over either of the other two. If I only had one spot to play a guy, it would be Edelman of those three. So again, in a vacuum, I would take that trade.
How about you, Steve?
Yeah, like if I have Edelman and I'm getting the offer John Ross and Singletary, I'm not clicking accept. I want something a little bit more for Edelman, who I can start week in and week out and not have to think about it.
Yeah, I'm with you at this point. I'm with Andy. I do like Singletary. I do think he gets the job at some point this year. But, if I can get Edelman, I'm taking Edelman for those two.
Do you see this Gurley for MVS trade? This is ridiculous. Someone got Gurley for MVS.
Yeah, see, I'm not fortunate enough to feel like I'm in those leagues. So.
See that, and that's why it never hurts to ask. Is all I ever say. Never hurts to ask. I am one of those guys. I put trade offers out all the time. I love to trade. It's one of my favorite things. And I'm not a guy when I trade. I'm not out there trying to rip you off. I'm really not. I try to find trades that I think
I'm not either
for both sides that will help me, but will also maybe help them. Because it really does make it easier to trade later on with guys that trust you. One of the problems, I don't know if you guys run into this, but I run into it all the time, is I put trade offers out, and there's a lot of guys out there that just won't trade with me because they think I know something they don't.
I feel like I get some of that, but I don't think it's because they think I know something they don't. I think it's just because they think I'm a dick and they don't want to trade with me. But
well, you are, and I get that, but I don't have that. I'm not a dick.
In addition to that, though, I just feel like, people just are reluctant to make any trade that they feel like they're not the clear-cut winner. Go back to a home league. I have a guy who's it's a super flex league, and he's been trying to get before the Cam news. So going back before even week one, he's trying to get Cam or Derek Carr for me, which would be his number 2 QB in the Superflex League. And I said, I'm looking for a running back. And who do you want? I said, the only thing I think that makes sense that you would give up because he's your third running back. And I would be interested in would be your Sony Michel. And now we're week 4 into the season. He denied, and I put the trades out there. Wouldn't take Newton, wouldn't take Carr. He keeps offering me like Darwin Thompson for Derek Carr in a Superflex League. And I'm like, this is insane. Like, this is nuts. So, when you ask me a question like, what running back are you trying to buy low? I'm trying to buy Sony Michel low right now, and that's not working out too well. So, it depends on the league. It depends on the league.
That guy thinks you're a dick, so that doesn't help. And that's why I say I like to make fair trade offers, because when you go back to them, they're more, willing to look at another trade with you. That's all. So you can't base everything on one league. Every league is so different.
I'm not.
And that's all I say. It never hurts to ask. Go out there and look. A lot of people will turn you down, but so what? It's like the whole thing. If you go out there and kiss 100 women, one of them might kiss you back. 99 might slap you across the freaking face, but one of them might kiss you back.
I don't think in today's world you'd get to 99 slapping you.
Yeah, well, some guys out there might like that. So,
I don't know if you'd get past one today.
We got a couple more questions in the chat room, and we're going to finish those up and then get out of here. Justin Eller wants to know, do you think Godwin will play Sunday? I do think he plays Sunday. Would you play Gallman over him in a flex spot in PPR? I'll start with you, Steve. Tough choice.
Yeah, that's tough. Obviously coming off the injury, and then you got Jameis going into LA, where it could be a shit show for Jameis Winston with that defense. You get a volume play with Gallman and a juicy matchup. I think that you want to start your stud in Godwin, but if you have some players to get you through this week, I think Gallman is a nice volume play for you, and I also think he's going to come away with a touchdown. This nice matchup. Go Gallman if you have a good team, but if you really need Godwin in those points, go Godwin.
So you're saying Gallman to you is the safer option, and Godwin has the most upside.
Yeah, exactly. But I mean, I also don't trust Jameis at all in this game. So I don't know. I'm kind of looking at Gallman as maybe the better play, but that's really tough to say right now. But I would go Gallman if you have if you have 2 or 3 really good wide receivers. I think you can go Gallman at that flex and get yourself a good 12 to 15 points.
How about you, Andy? Are you in agreement, or because you're shaking your head like one time you're shaking no, next time you're shaking yes? Which way are you going?
Yeah, I first of all, the headline would be great, for Godwin. God rest on Sunday if he doesn't play. But the stud that we think he is, he's had, you take away the touchdown in week 1, it's been decent.
No, you can't take away nothing. It's happened.
Well, no,
I hate that kind of analysis. If you take this away, you can't. I'm
gonna circle back to this. So if you take away the touchdown from week 1,
if he got hit by a car, he wouldn't even be here.
Okay, if you take away the touchdown from week 1, it was just a decent game. He had a nice blowout performance in week 2, and then he was back to just a decent game in week 3. So I'm a little fearful of him, but him or Wayne Gallman hasn't really proven anything yet. So I feel much safer with Godwin. And then going back to that touchdown thing, there's just certain players have a knack for finding the end zone. Chris Godwin is one of those guys. Calvin Ridley is one of those guys who I tweeted out during halftime last week. Somebody said, does Ridley score? I said, I'd 98% guarantee he scores. And then sure enough, Matt Ryan must have dyslexia because he found Austin Hooper for 2 touchdowns right after I said that. He flipped the number on 18 to 81. But Chris Godwin has a knack for finding the end zone. So I will take that over Gallman.
I really don't, as Steve was, mentioning him going into LA to play on the road, going across the country, against the defense that so far has been playing outstanding. And that just scares the heck out of me. And then you add the injury on top of it. Look, the one thing you can say what you want about Wayne Gallman not being, a great running back, or we haven't seen anything. I get all that. But the one thing I do know is that he's a decent receiver out of the backfield. When he was a rookie, he had 34 receptions as a rookie. So he could definitely catch the ball out of the backfield, and I think that's where he may come into play in this one. It's not like I'm counting on him for a lot of rushing yards, but I do think he could end up with 4 or 5 receptions in this one as well and really pick up his PPR score. So that's why I like him, and I would go with Gallman. the injury, the matchup for Godwin just scares me. Could he absolutely go out there and have a great game? Of course he can. And no doubt about it. He's got that kind of talent. Like Andy says, he finds the end zone. So he could. But, that's why you got to make these choices and live with them. I see people, oh, man, I should have started this guy. You know what? Everybody that plays fantasy football or any fantasy sport can always say that. You have to just live with the choices you made. They seem like the right choices to you at the time, and you got to live with that. So get over it. We got another question here from Rome. David Johnson or Kerryon
What is this, the
Johnson?
Rome show?
Yeah, well, hey, that's okay. He's here listening. I want to get him in.
All right.
David Johnson, although I'm not answering his damn quick kicker question. We don't do kickers around here. I hate kickers. Kickers and team defenses should be stricken from the freaking record when it comes to fantasy football. Hate them to death. So no kicker answers. Pick one. Who cares? David Johnson or Kerryon Johnson? That's a good question. I like that one. I'll start with you this time, Andy. I think I started with Steve last time first. I don't know. One of you. You go this time, Andy.
This is a tough one. Because David Johnson has not really done anything much to make you feel like, he's a 2,000-yard guy. He wants to be. And Kerryon Johnson, I mean, we talked about him a bunch before. I still think David Johnson gives you a little bit more in the receiving game. I don't know. This is tough. I think I'd probably go with David Johnson in this one, but it's close. I wouldn't have an argument either way.
How about you, Steve?
Start both. I don't know why you wouldn't be able to, but if there's a situation where you're really choosing between both of these guys, I'll go Kerryon. I like that matchup, the high-scoring game. You won a piece of this game. I obviously talked about how high I am on Kerryon this week, so for me personally, he's just higher in my rankings. The volume he got last week, and then if you look at Kyler Murray and what they do with the Cardinals, they spread the ball around. The way that David Johnson's going to be valuable is in the receiving game, like Andy mentioned, but the way Kyler's spreading the ball around, that's not guaranteed or a funneled target. So give me Kerryon with that volume in a high-scoring game.
Yeah, I'm going to break the tie. I'm going with David Johnson. I still have him higher. He's scored almost 20 points more than Kerryon so far through 3 games. I'm going with David Johnson. I think they're going to need him in this one to be involved and heavily involved. So I like David Johnson a ton. And I already talked about a game script where I could see Kerryon Johnson not being used as much as we want him to be used. So I'm going on that. And look, we try and pick the spots using game script we try to make up in our head. And if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. It happens a lot, no doubt about it. But you got to go with something. You got to pick out something that works your edge for you. Izzy has another question for us. Brissett, Winston, or Mayfield in a 4-point touchdown league this week? Tough choices. I'm throwing Mayfield away till he shows me anything different. It's as simple as that. Plus, he's going against Baltimore in Baltimore. So he's out of this equation for me. Of the 3, I have Brissett the highest, and I trust him a little bit more than I do Winston with a tough matchup. And Mayfield just looking scared of his own shadow last week. That scares me. Could he turn it around? Absolutely. But right now, I have Brissett the highest. How about you, Steve?
Man, this is really tough. With no TY, this actually makes things difficult. Brissett is the obvious choice as far as matchup goes. I have a feeling that we're scared of Winston, and he's just going to have some garbage time points and end up being the highest score of the week with some garbage time touchdown and Chris Godwin to save your week. Honestly, but I would go Jacoby. I think he's going to, like I said, he's that 250 and 2 guy. He still has weapons out there with Ebron, and maybe we see more Paris Campbell. Oh, that's tough. Yeah, I guess I would go Jacoby. I like what you put
up. Good old my ball. He gives me that all the time. I love it. How about you, Andy? You want to break the tie? Oh, no tie. You ended up saying Jacoby. Okay.
Me?
Yeah. Who do you like?
Oh, I'm going Jacoby also. I don't think it's crazy at all. I think this team has more options than just T.Y. Hilton. So you look at the numbers. Not only does he have a good matchup, but he's the only one that's been consistent. He's thrown at least 2 touchdowns in every game so far this year. Mayfield hasn't hit hasn't hit 2 touchdowns once yet, and same as said of Jameis, other than the Giants game, who can't throw more than 1 touchdown against the Giants right now. So Jacoby Brissett's been the only one showing that he's actually a viable fantasy quarterback of these 3 right now. So I will take Jacoby Brissett, and independent of any T.Y. Hilton status.
And there's still a chance T.Y. Hilton may play. I mean, he came out and said, we'll see. I mean, he's going to try and play. So there's still a chance he does get on the field. We just don't know at this point. Next question. Michael Stepney. Curtis Samuel or Fitz for a flex spot in a PPR? I'll start with you, Andy. Which one do you like this week?
PPR, man, it's tough too. I like them both. I mean, you get options like this where I feel like, and this was a great question Steve mentioned before with the running backs. Why aren't you playing both of them? Who do you have that you can't get both of these guys in? These guys are both in your flex spot, so good drafting on your part if you're choosing as a flex between Curtis Samuel and Larry Fitzgerald.
Well, you got to remember, Fitzgerald was drafted pretty late this year. Everybody was after last year was pushed back on him, so he was drafted really late.
I guess so, but I would assume, I don't know. It's a nice problem to have. I think I would take Curtis Samuel because I think there's greater upside there, and that's what I'll be hoping to get out of my flex. But it also depends on who those other starters are. If you feel like they're kind of volatile, then I'd lean Fitz for a little bit more of a higher floor. So if you're looking for ceiling, Samuel. If you're looking for floor, Fitz. But I would roll Curtis Samuel probably over Fitz this weekend.
What? See, I don't get that. Why don't you think that Fitz has a good ceiling? First of all, he's got 31 targets through 3 games, so he's averaging over 10 targets a game. And in week 1, he was 8 for 113 and a touchdown.
More of the
fantasy points.
More of the end zone option. I think they can both wind up in the same target range. I think there's some still unknown about what Samuel is with Kyle Allen. I mean, you can make the same argument. We don't really know what Fitz is with Kyler Murray yet, but I do think that target-wise, they'll probably be in the same range. I think Fitz will have a couple more receptions, maybe a couple more yards, but I think Samuel has a better opportunity to find the end zone. So that's the name of the game. You know those numbers add up real quick when you start finding 6. So I will say Curtis Samuel to me has a higher upside.
Yeah, I'm going Fitz. I told you guys he's my kryptonite. I'm going Fitz. I like what he's doing in this offense. He's getting plenty of targets. He's scored 2 out of the 3 weeks. But it's not like I dislike Samuel. I like Samuel a lot this week too. I just have Fitz a little bit higher. That's all. But again,
I'm treating Larry Fitz as a borderline wide receiver 1 every week in this offense, and especially with the volume he's getting. So at this point, it's got to be Larry for me because I think Curtis Samuel is more of a flex option where Fitz can be that wide receiver 2 for you every week.
Oh, and okay, let's see. We got Brendo. This is a real easy one. What do I do with Diggs? Sit his ass on the bench until he does something. You can't trade him at this point. He's got no value. Nobody's going to give you jack for him at this point. You got to sit him and wait him out.
Watch, this is going to be the week.
Very well could be, but he is still going to be on my bench where I own him until he does it. And if he does it this week, then I feel good about not playing him because at least I know he's got some life going forward. So I'm okay with that.
What are you accepting for him? Somebody's making an offer.
What am I accepting for him? If somebody's trying to come steal him low for me, he's not going to get him that low.
Okay.
I still treat him as a stud, and you got to give me something good to get him because at some point I do think he's going to turn it around. But right now he's going to be on my bench until he does turn it around.
Tyreek Hill.
Well, I'll take Hill for Diggs in a heartbeat.
Okay.
Without him, I wouldn't even blink. I'd be like, slam, except thank you.
Okay.
I'd send you roses, a box of candy. Yeah, Candy Grams, Land Shark. I'll send you everything, man. You do that.
Because Diggs is going to be on your bench anyway. So it's the same thing as an injured Tyreek Hill.
Well,
and Tyreek Hill is a good chance he comes back next week from all indications.
Okay.
So yeah, I would do that. In a
I was just
heartbeat.
thinking of names just to throw out there as guys that are
No, I
you're
get
not
it.
getting
And
anything
that's
out
fine.
of that, you
Yeah.
know.
No,
Yeah.
I get it, but I would take that in a heartbeat. First of all, just
Nobody wants
because
to
of the
buy my
offense
Diggs.
he's in and the quarterback he has.
Nobody wants to buy my Diggs in my leagues that I have him. Nobody wants him.
Yeah,
So,
really. You can't get crap for him right now.
no.
So at this point, you got no choice but to sit him there and occasionally take a shot on him and say, okay, I'll stick him in. Hopefully it's this week. Yeah, he's on my bench until he does something. Let's see. Sorry, Rome. I don't have a Cash App. I don't put any financial stuff on my phone. I just never do. They're too easy to clone these days. So I don't put any financial things. But thank you for the thought process. If you want to help us, give us a thumbs up, give us a like, give us a comment, subscribe to the channel, come back and watch us again. That'll help us. Actually help us more than a Cash App will, because I'll just spend that on I don't know, something bad. So I appreciate the thought sentiment, but just keep coming back. That's the big one. Okay, one more question, and then we are out of here, folks. I really was trying to get it into an hour this week. I just can never do it. But the guys come out to us. I want to answer their questions. Mendo wants to know 2 wide receiver spots and a half PPR. Pick between Diggs, Godwin, Demarcus Robinson, Tyrell Williams, and Curtis Samuel. Wow, that's tough choices there. Let's see. I don't like Tyrell's matchup this week. Oh yeah, going up against Indy, they've been pretty good against wide receivers. Getting beat up everywhere else, but not against wide receivers. Demarcus Robinson is going to be one of them. I just think he's got a good chance to score. And if Godwin practices fully on Saturday, he'd probably be the second. And if not, I'd probably go Curtis Samuel. Steve, what's your thoughts?
Yeah, I'm thinking Godwin and Robinson here. Godwin is still a nice play for you. And like you said, you got to look at the practice report and see what's going on with Godwin. Keep an eye on that. And then we've been talking about it. We've been talking about it all night with these Chiefs. You can't sit them right now. You can't sit your Chiefs. So you got to play DeMarcus Robinson here. Curtis Samuel is close. But I'm not thinking about Diggs this week. Even if Diggs goes off on your bench, oh well. You can't play him at Chicago when he hasn't done anything for you in good matchups. So you have to bench Diggs. It feels like in this situation, I'm going D-Rob and I'm going Godwin.
How about you, Andy?
I have Tyrell Williams higher than most this week, so I'm fine taking him. He's found the end zone every week, and then going back to
I do know that. I just
going back to
I get it. Don't get me wrong. I get it. And he's their biggest option there.
Yeah, and you go back to the and it's half PPR, which it's
I hate half PPR.
It's PPR, but it's standard.
Like having half a boner. What good does it do you?
It's confusing. So I would go Tyrell and I would go D-Rob, just because, like you said, everything we've been saying about the Chiefs. He just Mahomes literally could throw 7 touchdowns this week, and Robinson could have 3 of them. I mean, they were. You look at the route that was run by Mecole Hardman at the end of the end of the first half last week.
Look at that. Perry's calling you a yo-yo.
Calling me a yo-yo?
Yeah, while you were talking, he put yo-yo up. I thought he was talking about you.
He could just be saying yo-yo like I'm here.
I know, that's what he is saying. I'm just trying to bust you.
More likely.
You look at that Hardman long touchdown. What was it, 83 yards, something like that?
Yeah.
That could have been.
Well, look at DeMarcus Robinson though, with that great catch.
That was a great catch.
Wow.
Right, but the Hardman reception, Robinson was right next to him, on the outside.
Yeah,
it could have just as easily been Robinson. So, if the safety shifts to Hardman, that's Robinson with that 83-yard touchdown. So, I mean, pick your poison. They were running. It looked like what they were running 4 verts on that, and it's just okay. You can't cover everybody, so Hardman was the open guy. There you go. It could just as easily been DeMarcus Robinson or Sammy Watkins. So fire up all your Chiefs.
Okay, well, that's all the questions in the chat. I want to thank everybody for coming out tonight. And again, this has been FF Champs After Dark. I am Jim Day, a.k.a. the Fantasy Taz on Twitter. Steve, our guest tonight. Steve, again, tell everybody where they can find you, your Twitter handle, all of that good stuff. Get it out there.
Yeah, it's at FF Professor ST3 on Twitter. The host of the Hot Take podcast. We record every week for you. Get your start sit questions out. We did a live show this week, which was tonight, actually right before this show. We might be doing that more often. Of course, that's at Full Time Fantasy on their Twitter. So you can find us on the Full Time Fantasy Network.
There you go, Andy. How about you?
You can just find me on Twitter at People's Pen. Just look for me there.
Don't say that so quickly because people don't realize when you say People's Pen that there's a Z in there.
There's a Z. Just look for my name, Andy Singleton. It's also up here. If you're listening and watching this right now, you can see it says People's Pen. But Andy Singleton, you can find me on Twitter. All my links are up there. Expand the box score. Steve Toroni does the Pick and Roll podcast with Al Hunter that released tonight as well. We have a bunch of articles up there. Go check out Matt Midlakowski. He's been on fire. He's 17-6, handicapping college and NFL games this year. John Helmkamp, who we had on this show last week, the rush rating, he's adding some new tweaks to that model and to that system as well. I mean, there's just too much to name. If you're into college DFS, go check out the Pick Six right now from Matt Jajeski. Has been on fire with his DFS lineups for college football as well. Go check those out. All my links will still be on Twitter, so look on Twitter for all the links. But I'm taking a hiatus from commenting on Twitter because I'm just tired of it. I'm tired of the drama.
Yeah, I don't know where you guys get all this drama on Twitter, man. I never have any drama on Twitter.
Yeah.
Well, except when IDP Tipster was around, but outside of him, I didn't have any bit of drama. I don't ever have drama on Twitter. You guys have drama all the time. Makes me crazy. It's like, what the heck?
I don't look for it, but it finds me.
Okay, folks, I'm Jim Day. Find me on Twitter at Fantasy Taz. You can find me pretty much every day doing something, Monday through Friday, of course, at 1 o'clock p.m. Eastern time. I'm on Fantasy Football Frenzy from 1 to 2. Every Sunday morning at 9, I'm on with Joe Pisapia on Roto Experts in the morning. Again, on the Sports Grid Television Network on Zumo TV, channel 719. And, I have my other podcast on Wednesday nights with Tony Cicada and Mike Blewett called the What the Fantasy Football Podcast. So check us out. Again, if you're out there listening, we appreciate you. Please keep coming back. Give us a comment. Give us a listen. Give us a rating. Subscribe to us. Whatever you could do to help us grow, we definitely appreciate it. We're trying to come out here and give you guys plenty of great information each and every week. So please help us out as well. Thank you all. Have a great weekend and good luck in week 4. We will see you next week.